The Declaration of Independence, a transcription. This recording will include a preface, a reading of the Declaration of Independence, followed by a postface and credits. Preface, written by 2nd Lieutenant Cristian Villegas of the Texas State Guard, who is the son of a Mexican immigrant, the grandson to a U.S. Army Korean War veteran, and the great-grandson of North and Central Native Americans, also called indigenous peoples. In the month of June 1776, the United States Declaration of Independence would be carefully crafted by legends of the American Revolution, Benjamin Franklin, John Adams, Roger Sherman, Robert R. Livingston, and most notably Thomas Jefferson, with the finished document officially adopted by the Continental Congress on July 4, 1776. The Declaration would then be handwritten onto parchment paper by Timothy Matlack, a brewery business owner and future military officer for the Continental Army, before being signed by 56 delegates to the Second Continental Congress on August 2, 1776, at Independence Hall in Philadelphia. Among the signers would include the President of the Congress, John Hancock, whose large signature would become interpreted as a statement of defiance against British rule, making no confusion in who was officially rebelling against the Crown. Among the less remembered writers of the Declaration of Independence, Roger Sherman would be the only founding father to sign all 4 great state papers of the United States, which included the Continental Association, the Declaration of Independence, the Articles of Confederation, and lastly, the United States Constitution. As for Robert R. Livingston, his legacy would include administering the oath of office to George Washington when he assumed presidency in April 1789, and would also serve as the United States Minister to France during President Thomas Jefferson's administration, negotiating the legendary Louisiana Purchase and stating during the agreement's signing, "We have lived long, but this is the noblest work of our whole lives." The United States takes rank this day among the first powers of the world. Of the 56 delegates who would sign the Declaration of Independence, representing the 13 colonies united against tyranny and abuse, each figure would become a hero for the American dream in their own right, pushing the noble experiment forward both during the American Revolution and long after the days of early independence. Several would become United States presidents, with others becoming Constitutional Convention delegates, congressional senators and representatives, university founders, U.S. ambassadors, war heroes, and civic leaders. Yet all shared one common belief: the promise that the United States would always pursue liberty and justice for all, and continue to work towards the covenant made in the Declaration of Independence, that we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
The United States Declaration of Independence. Please note, the following text is a transcription of the stone engraving of the Parchment Declaration of Independence, the document on display in the rotunda at the National Archives Museum, with the spelling and punctuation reflecting the original. In Congress, July 4, 1776, the unanimous declaration of the 13 United States of America. When in the course of human events, it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them with another, and to assume among the powers of the earth the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and of nature's God entitle them. A decent respect to the opinions of mankind requires that they should declare the causes which impel them to the separation. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed, that whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it, and to institute new government, laying its foundation on such principles and organizing its powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. Prudence, indeed, will dictate that governments long established should not be changed for light and transient causes, and accordingly all experience hath shown that mankind are more disposed to suffer, while evils are sufferable, than to right themselves by abolishing the forms to which they are accustomed. But when a long train of abuses and usurpations, pursuing invariably the same object, evinces a design to reduce them under absolute despotism, it is their right, it is their duty to throw off such government and to provide new guards for their future security. Such has been the patient sufferance of these colonies, and such is now the necessity which constrains them to alter their former systems of government. The history of the present King of Great Britain is a history of repeated injuries and usurpations, all having in direct object the establishment of an absolute tyranny over these states. To prove this, let facts be submitted to a candid world. He has refused his assent to laws, the most wholesome and necessary for the public good. He has forbidden his governors to pass laws of immediate and pressing importance, unless suspended in their operation till his assent should be obtained. And when so suspended, he has utterly neglected to attend to them. He has refused to pass other laws for the accommodation of large districts of people, unless those people would relinquish the right of representation in the legislature, a right inestimable to them and formidable to tyrants only. He has called together legislative bodies at places unusual, uncomfortable, and distant from the depository of their public records, for the sole purpose of fatiguing them into compliance with his measures. He has dissolved representative houses repeatedly, for opposing with manly firmness his invasions on the rights of the people. He has refused for a long time, after such dissolutions, to cause others to be elected, whereby the legislative powers, incapable of annihilation, have returned to the people at large for their exercise, the state remaining in the meantime exposed to all the dangers of invasion from without and convulsions within. He has endeavored to prevent the population of these states, for that purpose obstructing the laws for naturalization of foreigners, refusing to pass others to encourage their migrations hither, and raising the conditions of new appropriations of lands. He has obstructed the administration of justice by refusing his assent to laws for establishing judiciary powers. He has made judges dependent on his will alone for the tenure of their offices and the amount and payment of their salaries. He has erected a multitude of new offices and sent hither swarms of officers to harass our people and eat out their substance. He has kept among us, in times of peace, standing armies without the consent of our legislatures. He has affected to render the military independent of and superior to the civil power. He has combined with others to subject us to a jurisdiction foreign to our Constitution and unacknowledged by our laws, giving his assent to their acts of pretended legislation, for quartering large bodies of armed troops among us, for protecting them, by a mock trial, from punishment for any murders which they should commit on the inhabitants of these states, for cutting off our trade with all parts of the world, for imposing taxes on us without our consent, for depriving us in many cases of the benefits of trial by jury, for transporting us beyond seas to be tried for pretended offenses, for abolishing the free system of English laws in a neighboring province, establishing therein an arbitrary government, and enlarging its boundaries so as to render it at once an example and fit instrument for introducing the same absolute rule into these colonies, for taking away our charters, abolishing our most valuable laws, and altering fundamentally the forms of our governments, for suspending our own legislatures, and declaring themselves invested with power to legislate for us in all cases whatsoever. He has abdicated government here by declaring us out of his protection and waging war against us. He has plundered our seas, ravaged our coasts, burned our towns, and destroyed the lives of our people. He is at this time transporting large armies of foreign mercenaries to complete the works of death, desolation, and tyranny, already begun with circumstances of cruelty and perfidy scarcely paralleled in the most barbarous ages, and totally unworthy the head of a civilized nation. He has constrained our fellow citizens taken captive on the high seas to bear arms against their country, to become the executioners of their friends and brethren, or to fall themselves by their hands. He has excited domestic insurrections amongst us, and has endeavored to bring on the inhabitants of our frontiers the merciless Indian savages, whose known rule of warfare is an undistinguished destruction of all ages, sexes, and conditions. In every stage of these oppressions, we have petitioned for redress in the most humble terms. Our repeated petitions have been answered only by repeated injury. A prince, whose character is thus marked by every act which may define a tyrant, is unfit to be the ruler of a free people. Nor have we been wanting in attentions to our British brethren. We have warned them from time to time of attempts by their legislature to extend an unwarrantable jurisdiction over us. We have reminded them of the circumstances of our emigration and settlement here. We have appealed to their native justice and magnanimity, and we have conjured them by the ties of our common kindred to disavow these usurpations, which would inevitably interrupt our connections and correspondence. They too have been deaf to the voice of justice and of consanguinity. We must, therefore, acquiesce in the necessity which denounces our separation and hold them, as we hold the rest of mankind, enemies in war, in peace friends. We, therefore, the representatives of the United States of America, in General Congress, assembled, appealing to the Supreme Judge of the world for the rectitude of our intentions, do, in the name and by authority of the good people of these colonies, solemnly publish and declare that these united colonies are, and of right ought to be, free and independent states, that they are absolved from all allegiance to the British Crown, and that all political connection between them and the state of Great Britain is and ought to be totally dissolved, and that as free and independent states, they have full power to levy war, conclude peace, contract alliances, establish commerce, and to do all other acts and things which independent states may of right do. And for the support of this declaration, with a firm reliance on the protection of divine providence, we mutually pledge to each other our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor.
The 13 states, united under a single banner, would include Delaware, Pennsylvania, Massachusetts, New Hampshire, Rhode Island, New York, Georgia, Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, New Jersey, Connecticut, and Maryland. The American Revolutionary War would last 8 long years, from 1775 to 1783, and from the sacrifices made over 200 years ago, a union would be forged. A union that in 2026 will become 250 years old. Over the course of the Union's life, between 1775 and 2022, according to the Department of Veteran Affairs, approximately 1.36 million Americans, both immigrants and native-born, have given their lives in wars and military operations, from the War of 1812 to the Great War in Old Europe. And from the ranks of unknown millions across the scores, countless Americans, civilians in every way, have risen up to serve and protect the people as citizens, with heroes such as Lewis and Clark, Booker T. Washington, Abraham Lincoln, Harriet Tubman, Levi Coffin, Frederick Douglass, Quanah Parker, Theodore Roosevelt, Jane Addams, Ellen Gates Starr, Wilbur and Orville Wright, Martin Luther King Jr., Cesar Chavez, Dolores Huerta, Jimmy Carter, John Adams, Stephen Mather, Horace M. Albright, W.E.B. Du Bois, Andrew Carnegie, and Dorothea Dix as just a few among the countless heroes who would walk among the ages, impassioned by the words of the Founding Fathers, and motivated to do what they could with what they had. 185 years after the Declaration of Independence was signed in 1961, a U.S. president from Brookline, Massachusetts would ask a people, "Ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country." The Founding Fathers risked everything when they put their names on the Declaration of Independence, and from the Minutemen of Virginia to the Continental Army enlisted of Pennsylvania, thousands others would sacrifice everything so that on a summer day every year, Americans can come together and celebrate the 4th of July while also discovering what they too can do for their nation, to make it better for those who come long after. As Benjamin Franklin once said, "For my own part, when I am employed in serving others, I do not look upon myself as conferring favors, but as paying debts. In my travels and since my settlement, I have received much kindness from men, to whom I shall never have any opportunity of making the least direct return."
The voices used for this recording come from naturalreaders.com, an AI text-to-speech software. The background music comes from the 2004 video game, Medal of Honor Pacific Assault, and James Horner soundtrack for the 1989 film Glory. The Medal of Honor Pacific Assault piece is the main theme, and the Glory pieces include Lonely Christmas, Brave Words, Braver Deeds, Preparations for Battle, and An Epitaph to War. The Declaration of Independence original transcript was acquired through the U.S. National Archives at archives.gov. The preface and postface were written by Cristian Villegas, and authors of the United States Declaration of Independence include the celebrated Thomas Jefferson, Benjamin Franklin, John Adams, Roger Sherman, and Robert R Livingston. This recording was made on July 4, 2025, and is for non-commercial educational purposes. Thank you for listening and learning with us.